everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers Podcast. I am Jody Grinwald. This week, my guest is Holly Fulger. Holly is an actress, writer, and producer. She began her acting career at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival, where she interned with Tom Hanks, with whom she has remained close friends. As of 2019, she is also the founder of the not-for-profit organization True Beauty Discovery. Their mission is to empower girls and women to understand that it is their individuality that makes them beautiful and powerful. Holly shares the good, the bad, and the misguided aspects of beauty in our culture. She is on a mission to help others understand what beauty truly means. Please take a moment to subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel, comment, like, and share. Download us on all streaming sites. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. Also, for more information about this podcast, the Changemakers Forum, and everything that Today is the Day is working on, go to todayisthedayliveit.com. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of the Zach G. Applaud Our Kids Foundation, providing funding for children living with financial barriers to take ongoing lessons in the performing arts. Go to applaudourkids.org for more information. The views expressed by all Today's the Day Changemakers podcast guests are their own. Their appearance on the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast does not imply any endorsement of them or any entity that they represent. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grinwald, and every single week, I always say the same thing. I get to interview the most incredible people who are doing incredible things around the world. And today, I have Holly Fulger with me. Hi, Holly. How are you?
Hi, Jody. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm really good, and I'm so excited to have you here today. So thank you so much. And I'm going to read from your bio first, and then we'll get into all of the wonderful things that you're doing and things that you've done. Okay? So Holly Fulger is an actress, writer, and producer, and was born in Lakewood, Ohio. She began her acting career at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival, where she interned with Tom Hanks, with whom she has remained close friends. She moved to Chicago, working in the theater community there as a member of the Remains Theater Ensemble. Ultimately moving to Los Angeles to work in television and film. She is best known for her roles in the Disney Channel original movie series Zenon, Girl of the 21st Century as Aunt Judy, and as Holly in the sitcom Ellen. Being in the spotlight, Holly has experienced the good, the bad, and the misguided aspects of beauty in our culture. She has written numerous articles on beauty, and an article she wrote for ICNN caught the attention of a CNN producer who interviewed Holly and 7 other women on their perception of beauty. To Holly, the most interesting part of this was listening to other women's stories and hearing how difficult it was for women to really say what is beautiful about themselves. This began her exploration into true beauty, creating the web series Speaking of Beauty and then the Hollywood Beauty Detective. In 2019, she founded the nonprofit True Beauty Discovery with the mission of empowering girls and women to understand that it is their individuality that makes them beautiful and powerful. TrueBeautyDiscovery.org is where you can find more information. Holly, what an incredible bio. How does it feel to hear it back?
Oh, it's kind of cool, actually, because you live your life and you kind of forget that you've done all these different things. So, yeah, it makes me happy and proud, to be very honest.
You know, and it's so interesting because when you're writing it, it's so different than when you hear it and someone else reads it to you, right?
Yes, very different because, I'm constantly changing it, or it has to be a certain length, or I did this, that, or the other. So, yes, it's very different.
Well, I know, I always ask where you were brought up, but you already had that in your bio in Lakewood, Ohio. But tell us about yourself as a child.
I was very shy. I was very creative. I loved my dolls and my stuffed animals. I loved reading. I wasn't, I was fine just kind of reading a book or being kind of imagining different worlds and things like that. So I was, my older sister was much more outgoing and much more kind of the leader of the pack. I was not that. I was just kind of a shy little girl. At that time, I remember that all I wanted to do, as I grew up, I was very skinny and I had terribly bad eyesight. So I had these really thick glasses they were, it makes your eyes look all weird. And so it wasn't like, I was a nerd, kind of a shy nerd who read a lot, but who was really nice. So
Oh. What were your aspirations? Like, were you ever thinking, do you remember time you're thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up, when you were little?
yes, I think a lot of times I thought about being an actress because I love to imagine things. I loved to create worlds, right, with my dolls or my, different stuffed animals or stuff like that. So I thought of that, but I also couldn't. I grew up in Ohio, so it wasn't like it wasn't like I was going to plays with my family or anything remotely like that. So it seemed so out of reach to do something like that. But I always held that in my heart.
You brought up the glasses and the thick glasses. Did you feel back then that that was different than the other kids?
Yeah. As I grew up, when I got into, like, say, around 5th or 6th grade, and I think as girls, you get to a certain age and you become aware of different things, right? You become aware of boys, you become aware of your looks in a different way. It's not just, oh, this is me. It becomes different. And I was definitely, not in the realm of, oh, look at that really cute, pretty girl. I was not that. And I was bullied and for how I looked. And that was incredibly painful and mean-spirited. So, that was kind of one of my, I've shared the story many, many times, but one of my defining moments was when I was 13, walking home from school and thinking I looked great. I'm sure I didn't, but, thinking I looked great and still had the glasses. And a carload of boys drives by, beeps at me. I think, oh, finally, maybe high school might be okay. And they barked at me and told me I was ugly and it was moments like that. But that was a very defining moment as I was walking home. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to cry about this. I'm going to get home. I'm just going to get home. And it was, later in life, I talk about it and I'd laugh about it. But frankly, it was incredibly painful to go through something like that. And that was one of the things that, moments like that shape your life. They just do. So,
what would you tell that little girl now?
Oh, I would be proud of her because she just walked her way home and she created her life. And I would just say to her, oh, you're just, well, now it's when I want to say with my nonprofit, it's just, you're so beautiful. Look at you, look at who you are and what you have and all the wonderful things about you. That's what I would say. Yeah.
I definitely, we're going to talk a lot about your nonprofit because I feel like that, just kind of hearing where it all started, I kind of now see the trajectory, and it makes perfect sense of why the connection of why it's so important to do what you're doing with True Beauty. But before we go there, I want to go back to, you talk about the acting piece of what you've done. So you went from that shyer, but acting is not a shy thing, right? No. Acting, you're putting yourself. So how did you make that transition?
As I got to high school and I got contacts, right, and my braces came off, the world shifted a bit. And I noticed that. I was always the little girl walking home with the specs and the, boys barking at her. But it was different. So I began to, one of the things I thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to be a famous model and I will show those boys. So that was something that I thought would help. So I started modeling in Cleveland. And, it's not like, not to be mean, but it's not like I'm going to become, Kate Moss here. But it took me to Chicago because my agent here in town had an agency in Chicago. So I moved to Chicago and I looked into acting classes. And I started taking acting classes, which again, I was even too shy almost in college. I mean, I did act in a few plays, but when I got to Chicago, it's when I really started to think about acting. And I started to take classes, and I found that acting allowed me to express parts of myself that I was unable to do in my life. I could access things and present them as a character that was very fulfilling. And it was, it was moving to people, or it became part of a story that I was very comfortable doing, as opposed to other things. But as an actress, it's just, you're in a role and, you're accessing parts of yourself. So it just didn't seem as scary to me, or it didn't. It was a way for me to say, this is me, this is who my soul is, without, bearing my soul, just me like, ugh. It was more to be in the moment with the character.
Can you imagine if we could just do that in our regular life, right? Because we're so afraid of judgment, and we get judged, right? Because those boys were judging and people judge throughout. And if that wouldn't happen, we wouldn't have to turn to those kinds of things to be free and to allow ourselves to be free. Thank goodness we have them. The performing arts, I have a nonprofit that's all related to that, supporting children in that field. And I see how it connects them. But the bad news is that there's so much judgment in the world that we aren't allowed to release, who we truly are. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, one of the things that happened to me as an actress was, as I was working in the theater, and I began to audition for television roles, and movie roles, which was exciting and thrilling. And I was a young ingenue, and I was all, hopeful and giggly and happy. And I got cast in television. And my career shifted then, because instead of staying in Chicago and doing theater, I went to LA and I began acting in television. And what that did for me was that there's a lot of judgment out there as far as how you're supposed to look when you work in television and film. It's different, but it's still really intense. You're too old, you're too this, you're too fat, you're too, it just became a thing, right? Your hair's not right, your face isn't right, this isn't right, that isn't right. So that the part of you that is an actress and wants to, give of those things that those gifts you have, it's also a double-edged sword, because you're constantly being judged for how you look. You go on an audition, you don't get the part. It's mainly, most of the time it's because of how you look. Mm-hmm. Not all the time, no, I can't say that. But anyways, it became an issue with me. It became it was like a fight. I wanted to do certain kinds of work, and yet I also wanted to be in a place where I was pretty, or I could be a movie star. And it became this weird conflict for me, which presented itself throughout my life. Again, being one of the motivators for the nonprofit, but also the exploration into what beauty is and how we view it, and how we're put in places that we have to think about that. And it's been such a narrow view of what is beauty, how are you supposed to look, who are you supposed to be. And I feel that it's so insidious, that kind of talk about beauty and looks and being a woman and doing things a certain way, that sometimes we don't even understand it because we're so used to it.
Absolutely. And I know you worked on the, Ellen sitcom. You were part of Disney, Zenon, which is awesome. And you got to work with kids, right? So at that point, working on Disney, you were surrounded by kids and really got to see that whole teen, I'm sure the whole teen piece of it too. And remembering yourself at that age and then seeing the kids nowadays, did you see any similarities and what you went through as a kid and what they were going through being on that show?
Somewhat. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for young girls, little girls who are growing up. Part of doing the Disney film, that Disney film was, I still get recognized for that. Now the girls are now, or the boys are now like in their 20s, but I still, all I have to say is, did you ever watch Zenon? And it's kind of hilarious. But I did see that it's a pressure. It's a pressure to look and be a certain way. So yes, I think those girls were really young then, but Kirsten has gone on to, I believe she works on a sitcom. Raven Simone has kind of come out, as an advocate, and she's pretty solid in who she is. A lot of the other kids, I don't know that they're acting anymore, but I don't know. But yes, you begin to see things you went through that they might be going through. So it allows you to have a lot of compassion too.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, they are in that limelight where they're being guided by the industry. You did, back as a kid, you didn't have that industry on top of it. You had, it was just yourself. And now you've got an industry telling you, you've got one freckle out of place or whatnot. And I've always said that because my kids went for auditions and stuff. And I just remember that feeling, and I know what it feels like for them. And it's hard because you don't feel pretty or you're not beautiful enough. And you don't know how to define what beauty is. And what were you going to say? Because I saw that you had a thought there.
I understand that. It's never enough. Never enough. You're never enough. You're never this enough, that enough, whatever enough. You're not enough. And I felt that my entire life. And I think that's not a good thing to feel your entire life. I don't want anybody to feel that. I want I would love every child to know not only are they enough, but they're extraordinary, and those qualities that are just them. That's extraordinary to me. That's your specialness. So
absolutely. So what is your definition of beauty?
Beauty is so personal, I think. And beauty is very hard to define. I think when you hear the word beauty or beautiful, it tends to go to, oddly enough, women. I remember Googling the word, I can't remember, it's either beautiful or beauty. And what comes up are hundreds of pictures of women, of beautiful, beautiful women, which is kind of disturbing in a way, right? Because beauty can be anything. Beauty can be anything. It's how you see the world is your perception of beauty. So if I explain beauty to you, it's who I am. I'm explaining something about myself. My mission with True Beauty Discovery and with exploring beauty is about how the word beauty and beautiful has been labeled to look a certain way, because it pigeonholes, I believe, girls and women. And I know I use the term girls as it can be non-binary, femme-identified, it can be whatever it is. But I use the term girls in that way. But I think it has been very narrow and very limiting. And you'd like to think it's changed and you'd like to think it's different. But I don't believe it is that much different. And you look at statistics and you think, well, we've grown and it's not that way so much anymore. But it still is, I think.
Oh, definitely. I agree with you 100%. And what I find interesting is that some of the old feelings that I used to have about myself, beauty wise, are back again in a different way as we age, right? So now you see the lines and you see all the different things and I feel like that mindset changes again as you get older. But I want to talk to you about your journey to True Beauty Discovery and what made you start this nonprofit. I'm really excited to talk to you about.
I think that I began exploring it because when I had my kids, I have two children. They are my stepchildren, but they're my children. Their mom had died, and I met them when they were very young. And I was suddenly in a situation where I had two young children, Sasha was 3, she's my daughter, and Daniel was 5 when I met them. And I had been all about my career, all about me. And suddenly I was a mom, and suddenly my focus shifted to raising these 2 children, and my career shifted. And it wasn't something that I thought about a lot, like my career's shifting. It was more, oh, I have 2 children I have to raise. They've been through an intense trauma. They've lost their mom, and I'm here to help. I'm here to help be their mom, their mom who's going to raise them from here on in. So as I did that and I put more focus into the kids, I didn't work as much. So suddenly when I wanted to kind of get back into it, I was older and the roles were different and they weren't as fun. They weren't as exciting. They just were roles for me at a certain age where I played the divorced woman crying or the woman who was beaten by her husband, or I don't know. It wasn't that interesting to me. So I began to think about my acting teacher years ago, who used to always talk about when you work as an artist, as an actor, you always look for that part that is the piece that has sometimes given you a lot of pain, or is, it's something that's there that has a lot of feeling there. And for me, it was always about how I looked, what I looked like. So I began exploring beauty. And I started with a show called Speaking of Beauty, where I interviewed 16 women of different ages, different cultures, different everything about what they thought beauty was. And it was a web series. And I wrote a book called it was called Speaking of Beauty. And it was Speaking Beauty's inner beauty journal about how, different ways to look at beauty and different ways to think about beauty. One of the things that I noticed so much about interviewing those women was how their thoughts of beauty were every single one of the women had moments where they felt not enough, not pretty enough, too different, to every single one of them. And I just found that really interesting. To me, it was fascinating, and I kept exploring it. So from Speaking of Beauty, I decided I wanted to do something to explore what beauty was in Hollywood, because beauty in Hollywood is completely manipulated, or it has been. So I crowdfunded, I raised money to do the Hollywood Beauty Detective. And we shot that show. I think there's 6 episodes that we shot about exploring beauty in Hollywood, how you get ready for the Academy Awards, what's manipulated, what isn't, Photoshop. I had this guy Photoshop me, this photographer. It was hilarious because we shot me without makeup, in makeup, and then Photoshopped. And it's like, but then I look at the Photoshop and I'm like, oh, I look good. But then it's like, that's not me. So it was, and that was a fun exploration into, Hollywood and beauty and what that's all about. And that led to this whole other exploration into beauty and and interestingly enough, I had come back, I was in LA, living in LA, and I'd come back to Cleveland, Ohio for Thanksgiving. And I have been very close friends with Tom Hanks ever since we interned at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival here in Lakewood, Ohio. And we've all those interns have all remained in touch. And I stayed later to see Tom doing a fundraiser for the Cleveland Film Commission. And I met the head of the film commission, who was the head at that time. And I talked to him about what I was doing. I thought it was a great series. And he put me in touch with a woman who has a marketing company here in town. Long story short, I had been partnered with her for years. I don't even know how many years, at least 5, probably more, to develop what I'm doing. And along the way, we began thinking about it and began thinking, if in fact we start this website and develop this show and we partner with beauty brands, aren't we doing the same thing that we're taking advantage of insecurities if we make money off this. That just seemed wrong. So we discussed forming a nonprofit that was about empowering girls and women to understand that it's their individuality that makes them beautiful and powerful, so that every partnership we do, every thing we have up on our e-commerce site, we're developing that. But as we grow, all of that will go back into the nonprofit, so that we're not partnering with brands and making money off of, wow, we're enlightening you, but let's still make money off that. We're not doing that. So that's how it came to being. But I have to be honest, it was my daughter, Sasha, that really fueled this whole thing and kind of put me into a gear of, oh, okay. And it was, as I was looking into the whole thing about beauty and exploring these shows, my daughter was growing up, and my daughter was in high school, or getting into middle school and then high school. And I saw her go through the same things I went through. So I think it's when it's about you, it's sort of like, I can deal with, I'm fine, I'll deal with me. But when you see somebody you love go through something painful, then I put my dukes up. And then I'm all about, okay, well, maybe I can change this. Maybe my gift to the world as I move through my life is maybe I can make a difference there. And it's what I know. It's a world I've been in for a long time. And that's what I decided to do. So I know that's a long-winded answer to a question you asked.
Is not, because that is you took us on the journey with you. So thank you for that, and how you got there. And so now tell everybody a little bit more about True Beauty Discovery, the programming. I mean, I'm going to post the sizzle reel, link to it, but it's beautiful. You've done such an exceptional job. And I think what's so important and because I also starting a nonprofit, when your heart is in it and you're doing it for the right reasons and you really want to make a difference, I think just watching and seeing the things that you're trying to do, you're going to help girls really accept who they are. And that's a big deal.
Pam 10 is a leader in IT enterprise solutions and staffing. They are driven to transform their clients' business performances. They do this every day by providing their clients with the best services and products like BizLego, an online community platform, and Colear, a unique learning management system. They also transform the lives of women and children through their associated nonprofits, SheTech, which supports women in and joining the technology field, and Softkin, support organization for kids in need. Pam 10, technology for social good. Go to pam10.com for more information.
You talked about earlier on those traumatic things that happen that shape your life. What you're doing is going to really help shape, girls' lives. If they run into those people, those bullies, they'll have you there to help guide them, which is awesome. So go ahead, Holly. Sorry.
Thank you. That's what I want from the nonprofit. The nonprofit launched during COVID, which was, again, I think all of us went through whatever we went through with COVID, but it launched then, which limited us to what we could do. But right now, where we are is we have a speaking series that is up on the website, and I interview various women who are role models. I haven't interviewed any men yet, but various women who are role models, who are real life role models. And that's up right now. We also started our workshops, our legendary workshops for girls, which I'm so excited about. And that's where I saw that we do make a difference. We did a workshop here in Ohio with a dance studio, and the girls were ages 12 through 17. And we did our workshop, which is about teaching the girls to access parts of themselves. And we do that through our 7 legends. We've created 7 legends that are personality-driven aesthetics that are informative of the qualities that we have. And there are 2 quizzes up on our website, one for kids, one for adults, to find out what your legend is. And as you find out what your legend is, you can read about your legend and you can learn the qualities that you share with your legend category. And for us, that's a way for girls and women to be able to look at those qualities and understand that there's so much about who they are that is unique, and there are ways to access those qualities as you grow through life. So our workshops are about that. We introduce our facilitator. We have 7 mentors that are with our 7 legends, and we show the girls, they take the quiz with their registration, and then we show them what their legend is. And then they break off into the legend groups. But the most wonderful thing about what we're doing is that we can see measurable outcomes. We can see, because we do quizzes and things like that, so we can see what the girls are going through, and if indeed we're making a difference. And that part to me is the most fulfilling part, in that I can see it. I can see that, 3 girls shifted their opinion about the qualities they have, and that they can use those qualities as they move through the world, as they can help their community. That part was just the most thrilling. And we're partnering with a lot of different organizations through the rest of the year, doing different workshops, the goal being to have a curriculum available on the website that anyone can use. And wherever you are, you can go on the website, and you can create your own curriculum and activities, and then you can do a workshop wherever you are. So that's what we've been working through. We've been building the curriculum and the activities, and wanting to finish that. I do a workshop in Los Angeles in July. So we're getting all that together. And the other thing that we're doing, which is in development, is a docuseries based on the 7 legends. And what we want to do is to go into a school, a relatively small school, I would say, and work with girls in their senior year of high school, and follow them through their senior year as they learn who their legend is, what their legend is, and see how understanding that they have these qualities about them. Watch their trajectory. Watch if, indeed, does that help them? Does knowing that they're a luminary and they think outside the box and they're an artist, does that help them? Does knowing that they're an activist, what can they do with that? How do you take that part of you that wants to change things? How do you do that? What do you do? And that's the goal, again, of the nonprofit, is to provide those avenues. And we're young, so, but we're moving. And I'm incredibly proud of what we've done and how we've grown.
Well, you should be. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You should be. When you do something that's in your heart, and then you're teaching, those who are impressionable, I feel like you're giving them that they don't even know what's happening, the thought process of that they can do what's in their heart too. Yep. And your organization is so much more. Our nonprofit is 5 years young, and I can tell you, I've been in your shoes, and it's a fun, interesting journey. But when you're on the side of 5 years, and I couldn't wait to get here, you're like, wow, seeing all the things that happen. I would assume too, though, bringing the girls together when you do those in-person workshops, and I know you're just starting them. The other thing you're creating too is this unbelievable support system that they're not even realizing yet. And you may not see it all yet because you're still new, but it will happen where they'll make these new friendships, and legends will come together. Yes. Without even, or they might just complement each other, right? They might not all be in the same legend, but they create like this whole world of their own. You have the
That's one of the things that we're developing, is to creating the community, creating the staying in touch with the girls, staying in touch with the parents, working with them so they can understand what their girls went through and how to help those girls, and how to create that community and that support. It's interesting because I have a young friend who went through a very difficult time she was a sophomore in high school, and she was considering suicide. So she was in the hospital, and she then went into support groups. And when I talked to her about that, one of the things she said to me was the thing that was the piece of it that helped her was understanding that other people went through what she went through. Because I think you're growing up and sometimes I think that you think, or you feel like you're the only one experiencing it, or you're alone. You don't have anyone. And again, that's one of the things that we want to counter is that, no, you're not alone. This is a safe space. And you have your mentor who you can be in touch with after the workshop, and you have True Beauty Discovery. And we did a follow-up Zoom call with the girls from our first workshop, which was wonderful, because then we got all their, input and stuff. And but creating that and having them understand that it's important to know that there are others there for you. And you don't have to go through it alone. You don't have to suffer, and you don't have to think that you're by yourself, because you're not.
There's always somebody out there, but I think what happens is that, and I've been talking a lot about this on podcasts too, is that a lot of times you're not the person that you talk to or share that with doesn't necessarily understand you or agree with you or understand where you're coming from. But when you put people like-minded in the room, then they do. But sometimes we have to search out those people, right? And that's what's so nice about organizations like yours, is that if they're searching for camaraderie, mentorship, or things like that, they know that it exists maybe even outside of their own sphere. Because not all the times we have all the advocates we need in our own sphere. We have to sometimes go outside.
I do think we have to go outside. And it's one of the things with the mentors that we use is that, again, my daughter told me this. She said, had I had a mentor when I was growing up, not me, right? Or not your mom, or just a mentor, somebody who is outside your family, but who can mentor you and understand you in a way that your mom can't. Your mom's different. The role is different. I think it makes all the difference. And I think that, again, that's one of the things that we stress with our workshops, is that there are those mentors.
Mentorship is something I talk a lot about on the podcast too. And I don't think that there's an age limit to mentorship. I think mentorship happens as old as I am, any age. Mentorship is really important. And I think that, we struggle with different parts of our lives because we're going through different phases, but there's always somebody that we should have that we're looking up to, or that's helping us along our journey, because we can't do it alone. They say it takes a village, because it does take a village. 7th through 7th grade, I feel like for my daughters, was very difficult. Middle school is a very difficult time. Yeah. I feel like, and principals share that with me all the time. Are you focused, specifically, you're keeping the range broad, right? From middle school to high school. Is that because that's the biggest changes in a child's life. But middle school seems to be, for some reason, they can't even find teachers for middle school. I don't know if you've heard that. They're struggling to find some teachers here in New Jersey for the middle schools.
I think middle school, again, our age range, and like I said, I think the last workshop was 12 to 17, although I think there was an 11-year-old. And it's interesting too, that it was brought up that, oh, that's too much of it. That's, you need to have it younger or older. But in that particular one, it didn't matter at all. It was rather wonderful, because I do think that young kids that are younger in this day and age are very different than when I grew up. They're much more savvy. They have access to so much more to read and so much social media. So they're different, and they're somewhat older, although they're not older. But I think that they're exposed to much more than I ever was when I was a kid. But yes, again, it's early days with us, so we're exploring all those avenues. But one of the statistics that I found, which was so interesting to me, was that confidence in girls levels off in the 5th grade, and it kind of drops, and it stays the same through high school, and it doesn't increase until a woman is in her 40s. Now, one study was one, and one study was Harvard. But it was just, and I'd have to footnote it to to tell you the exact
Sure.
publication, but that was so interesting to me because I thought about that, and I thought about, okay, so 5th grade is like middle school. So you get in 5th grade, and that's when I think that awareness comes of how you look, or girls becoming young women. And it's such a vulnerable time. And I just want to be a force that supports those young people, understanding that their individuality is their strength and is their beauty and power. That's, just to kind of come from there, because that kind of statistic, and it's, it can be so brutal. It can be so brutal with social media, and it's so, yeah.
That's what I was just going to bring up. Social media is as great as it can be, is as bad as it can be, because the bullying now, it's not just them on the street or in the school. You leave the school and a lot of things can be said about you through social media. What do you tell girls, and through your training too, with what you're doing with your organization? Do you have any advice for parents that may be listening to tell their children, how do they find the resources? What can they do? Any words of advice or wisdom from in that space? It's tough.
It is tough. I believe the more aware of situations you are, the better. I believe you can always come on our website, truebeautydiscovery.org, and you can explore the legends that we have there and start to understand that the goal with the legends is to give an understanding to young people, young girls, of strengths and they might not be aware of. And I think that to develop that, parenting is a tough job, let's face it. And when kids are in high school, it's really tough. And when your daughter's individuating from you and not thinking you're great, it's a very difficult time. But at the same time, to encourage those traits and attributes that your daughters have is so very important. And I think one of the things is that sometimes with girls, I think that to be a strong activist, or to be, maybe that's not what you think you should be. I think there's sometimes where you think you should be a certain thing, and being another thing might seem like, oh, I'm going to get laughed at, or they're going to think I'm stupid or weird. But I think beginning to understand that and beginning to see other women who are role models for you in where you kind of shine, I think that's really important, so that it's not just, it's women in STEM research, it's activists who are changing the world, it's trailblazers who are out there and making the world a different place. It's that spirit that will allow you to stand tall and stand your ground and be authentically you. And that's when you're in a world where people are telling you to be something different than you, it is really hard to stay in your zone and stay in your truth. So with parents, I would think understanding your child's gifts, that's so important. I don't think my parents ever understood that. I was like some fish out of water in Lakewood, Ohio, wanting to be an actress, and I'd never been to a play. I went to a play when I was in high school, at my high school. I was in, I don't even know, 7th grade, and it's the Shakespeare Festival at my school, and the kids are throwing gumballs and stuff at the actors. And I remember being mesmerized. I don't know where that came from with me. I didn't grow up in the Barrymore family. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a salesman. So, but that was me. And to understand those parts of your child and not diss them, or not to encourage them, that's very important. And I think it's probably hard for a parent who has a kid who wants to be an actor, and you think, oh my God, you're gonna struggle your whole life. Why don't you be a lawyer? Well, maybe that's not that fulfilling, but to just understand your child's strengths and support that.
Oh no, I agree. And going back to what we said about mentorship too, if it isn't you, and I know my kid has said, yeah, you have to say that to me. You're my mother. You
Right.
get that, you get that. It's then how can we kind of find them or help them to find, without them almost knowing it, that mentor out there, and creating the opportunity to go to a workshop like yours, right? Giving them those kinds of resources. And that's what's important.
Right. I think that with what we're doing, again, my next workshop is in LA in July, and we have a group that have the mentors that we're making sure that they're the right mentors for this particular workshop. What we are doing within our curriculum is we are putting the curriculum together in a presentation. We have a handbook for the mentors, we have a handbook for the facilitator, so that hopefully in the next, in the upcoming year, people will be able to do these workshops. Say, for example, in your town, if you're at a school, or if you have a daughter and you think, this would be a really, really fun event, or you have a Girl Scout troop, or you have anything like, again, a dance studio, if you have access to that and you think this could be really great, I think I'm going to explore this workshop. And you suss out the mentors within your community, because every community has mentors. Every single community has, you're a mentor. I'm sure you mentor many young people. And yeah, just to begin to explore that, and not ask teachers, ask other moms. I think that there's a world out there. Sometimes, I don't know, parents get distracted. Parents don't feel like, I just think parenting teenage individuals is really hard. I've been through it. I get it. I know. But there are mentors and there are individuals. Again, True Beauty Discovery is developing that. And that's one of our goals, is to continue to create mentors and support groups for girls to begin, so that they can access that and be able to talk to the mentor who is a doctor and wanted to study a certain thing, but felt weird about it, like I felt weird about being an actor. So how am I ever in the world going to do that? So I think it's just kind of researching and discovering, but also stay tuned to True Beauty Discovery, because that's what we're doing as well.
I love that. And how can, besides your website, do you have any social media?
Oh, we do. We have Facebook, True Beauty Discovery. I can send you all the links. We have Instagram, True Beauty Discovery.
Perfect.
And well, yeah, that's it right now. I was exploring TikTok, but just me and my kids looked at my TikTok and they were like, "Are you kidding? You're so weird." So
that's what my kids say about me. And we haven't, through Applaud Our Kids, we haven't done TikTok yet, but everybody's like, you gotta do TikTok because that's the demographic you're trying to reach. And I'm like, yeah, but I need to hire somebody who is that demographic. So because my age group, no. Yeah. I know my kids are like, yeah, Facebook, that's not for my age.
I know. We have a Instagram presence, which is pretty good. And we put up, we put up all the information about the speaking series. We have one monthly talk that you can see. And I mean, those have been wonderful. I interviewed Anna Sitar, who, speaking of TikTok, is this huge TikTok star. And she's got millions of viewers and she's like famous. I was, wow, that's really cool. Yeah. You figured this out. But so I interviewed her. I interviewed Jennifer King, who works in the NFL. She was the first Black coach in the NFL, first Black woman. Priscilla Frederick Loomis, who's an Olympian. Mona May, who's a costume designer, did Clueless. Anyways, there's so many inspiring women who, and when you listen to their stories and you understand what they went through, it'll make you feel supported, because each one of them has gone through their own share of questioning and worries and failures to get to where they are.
That's why it's so important to share your story. Everybody, so many people feel like I don't have a story. Everybody has a story.
Everybody has a story, and each story is extraordinary. Everybody has a story.
So Holly, is acting over now? No more acting for you in the future?
No, I'd love to. Getting new headshots done in June, because I'd love to do something. I really would. I'd love to, depending on what it is. I'm also doing an interview series here in Cleveland that just came out of the blue with an acting studio that I got to be friends with the owners. But we're doing a series called From Cleveland for Cleveland, and we're interviewing 6 individuals. It's going to be on a Zoom thing, but it's a live audience. You can ask the actors questions. And we've got Monica Potter, Alan Ruck, Paul Racy, Tom Hanks, Lily Reinhardt, and Mark Waters and his wife, Dina. He's a director and she's an actress. So I'm excited for that because we just put that together, and they're, Alan's my friend, Hanks is my friend. I mean, they're my friends. So I wrote them and I said, would you be interested in doing this? It's going to support the Film Commission and here in town. And so, yeah, I'm excited.
Well,
yeah.
It's funny because of course Tom Hanks is a common name. Everybody knows that name, right, in their homes, and it just sounds to me as he's everything I would have thought he would be, and his kindness, and that's awesome. That's just awesome that you befriended someone who wound up growing into a name that many people know.
This guy. Hey, I sent you a picture. And it's from the Shakespeare Festival when we were, and we're all like, it's a motley crew, and you'll see Hanks in there when he was 19. I think we were 19, something like that.
Is that what you call him? Do you call him Hanks?
Sometimes we call him Hanks. I mean, I know when we worked at the Shakespeare Festival and we were interning, we call him Hanks. It was just, and that's when we were building flats and it was a repertory company, so that if a play, when you're in rep, you have to change the set over the night before the other show. And that's what interns do. So after the show, you get there at 11 or 11:30 and everyone leaves and you change the set to the next set. So we were all in this, it's that time in your life where you're so young, and we all kind of weirdly have stayed in touch, and it's wonderful.
That is so beautiful. And that's the thing about, relationship and connection, is that a lot of times we get busy and we use the word busy, and you could have gotten busy, all of you, but instead there was a reason why you all stayed so connected.
There is. Yeah, it's really wonderful. We have Zooms every month, Zoom calls, and we have reunions. And we had a reunion in New York. That's the last time I was in New York, was April. We had a reunion there. So, and we also, Tom threw out the first pitch for the Cleveland Guardians. Tom Hanks did. So we had
no surprise. No surprise there. That's awesome. So Holly, what is the footprint that you're creating now that you want to leave behind?
I want to leave behind. I want to leave behind. Oh, hang on. That's a tough one. I want to know that what I have done has helped individuals. And frankly, if I help one or if I help a million, as long as I've done something to empower a girl or a woman to understand her strengths. And empower is one of those words, it's kind of one of those buzzwords right now, but I want, if that's the only thing I leave behind, is to have someone understand that their individuality is their key. It's their soul. It's what makes them them. If I can communicate that in any way and shift someone's perception so that they live a better life, that's what I want. That's it. That's just to make a difference in the way that I can make a difference, because I wish I was a scientist and could solve climate change, but I'm not. I'm just me. And that's, and that's where you lead from. You lead from your heart and you lead from your experience. And if I can do that, then I will feel like my life made a difference. And I think everybody should do that. You look at the world right now and it's hard. It's hard. And there's so much pain. And I think that as human beings, if we can think about that and think about what can I do? It doesn't have to be, it could be a garden or it could be anything. It's just something to make the world a little better, prettier, happier, prettier. But I think you know what I mean.
I do. And you made me almost tear up, because when you were giving your answer, you went inside to find it. And it was such a beautiful moment, actually, because that's what we need to do sometimes. We need to take that moment to go inside and find the answer. And then, you shared it with me and I could feel it. It's like I could actually feel that answer from you, because every time you talk about what you're doing through True Beauty, you can just see it's a calling. And that's beautiful. That's just such a beautiful
I could
thing.
get all teary too. I could get all teary. I get teary at the workshops.
I was getting teary just now when you were sharing. I'm like, oh.
I know, but it means something. It means something to help somebody, just a little, it doesn't, I don't know. So, because I do believe there's so much pain in the world. And if, so that's
we're broken.
Yeah. You counteract it with acts of kindness and goodness. So, it's so different, when I started out as an actress, as you grow, your life shifts so much, and your worldview shifts. At least mine did. So,
mine too. And yeah, and that's the thing. So much is going on in this world, and if we all come from just that little place that you just, I have a nonprofit, you have a nonprofit, and I know a lot of people in that world. We're trying to change the world. Kindness, everything. If we could just come from a space of a little bit more kindness and patience with each other, be really, really, really great. Anything else, Holly, you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Oh, but I love talking with you. I really have. And I love what you're doing. And thank you for letting me share my story. I appreciate it so much. I could, again, get all teary, so I don't want to. I'm not going to break down. But but I really appreciate what you're doing. I really do. It's marvelous. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you'll also help us with our International Changemakers Forum next year and be on board.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. How fun.
Yeah. And True Beauty will then get a name around the world too, which will be great. New people learning about it. And that's what I love about Changemakers. That's the whole goal, to be a connective movement, be like-minded people learning from each other, growing, and then sharing. And I think that's what I've been so blessed, Holly, to meet you and so many other incredible people. So thank you for your time.
You met Scott and Catherine. That's how I met you. Catherine Curry Williams and Scott Williams. They're wonderful. I love them. I'm doing my workshop, and it's with Catherine's organization, She Angels, in Los Angeles.
So it's so incredible. And I'm supposed to see Catherine next month. So here in New York.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, she's awesome. And that's the whole thing. Connection is so vitally important. So thank you, Holly, and keep in touch. And I can't wait to hear updates.
I will. I promise.
Awesome.
All right, awesome. Jody. Have a great
day. I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast before we go. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what small or large step are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goal? Thank you again to Holly Folger, and have a great week, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, honey.